Hi everyone, I'm Megan, and welcome back to another lab video for Analytics and Decision Sciences 4293 Professional Analytics. In this lab, we will be exploring various types of loops in Excel VBA. If you like the contents of this video, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. The material presented in this lab will be based on VBA for Modelers, the 5th edition by Christian Albright, and IV case 9B11E022 by Wei Zia, which you can find on IV cases through the link provided below. Please open Excel and follow along as we get started.
First, we're going to talk about the various types of loops that we can have. So loops are used in Excel to repeat a piece of code and can be repeated for a specified number of times until a specific condition is satisfied or while a condition holds true. So the first loop that we're going to talk about is the do loop until. So it's executed until a condition is true, and then the loop is exited. So it's written as do action loop until condition. So an example of this could be adding 1 plus 2 plus 3 all the way up until a specific value. So we're going to create an example of doing this in a loop. So we're going to start in our Visual Basics editor and we're going to create a sub-procedure titled sum1. So what we're going to do is we're going to declare I as an integer, and then we're also going to declare sum as an integer. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to have sum equal to sum plus I, and then I we're going to increase by 1 each time. So what's going to happen is it's going to be 0 plus 1, and then the value of that is going to be 1. So then we're going to do 1 plus 2, and then we're going to do 1 plus 2 plus 3, and so forth. So we're going to start by setting I is equal to 1 and sum is equal to 0. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create our do loop until. So what we're going to do is we're going to say do, we want our sum to equal our sum plus I. So basically what this is going to do every time is it's going to set a new value of sum equal to sum plus I. And then we're going to say I is going to equal I plus 1. So in each iteration, we're going to increase I by 1. And we're going to loop this until I is greater than 100. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get our message box, and it's going to be the value of our sum. So we can run this, and we'll get a value of 5,050. So to fact check that we did this right over in our Excel sheet, what we can do is we can have 1, 2, and then we can fill this down all the way to 100. And we can see down here on the bottom that our sum is equal to 5,050. So our loop worked correctly. So another loop that we can write is a do until loop. So basically all this is going to do is it's going to change our loop just in this last line and in this first line here. So for this example, we're going to call our sub-procedure sum2. So the only changes that we need to do in this case is we're going to take the until part of our loop and we're going to put that up until the do line. So that is the only change that we have here. So when we run this, we can see that we get the same answer, which makes sense because we're stopping it once we reach 100. So the next loop that we're going to investigate is the do while loop. So it has two forms. We have a do loop while and then a do while loop. So basically, it's kind of the same idea as the do loop. So we can write the condition of while either with do or with the loop. So we're going to use the same example as before, but we're just going to switch the format of the loop. So we're going to go down here and we're going to create a new sub-procedure called sum3. So with this sub-procedure, again, we're going to declare I as an integer, and then we're also going to declare sum as an integer. And again, we're going to set I is equal to 1, sum is equal to 0, which is all the same as before. So now the difference here is we have our do. We're going to say sum is equal to sum plus I is equal to I plus 1. So far, everything has been the same. But right now, after the word loop, this is where it gets different. So we're going to sum it, or we're going to do the loop, sorry, while I is less than 101. So once I reaches 101, it's going to stop. So we should expect to have the same answer as we did in our previous loops. So when I run this, oh my bad, we need the message box in here to tell us what our value is. So we want a message box sum. So again, we're getting 5,050, and that's what we would expect. So another variation of the do while loop is we can throw the while clause up in with the do portion of our loop. So we can quick change that and change our sub-procedure to be sum4. And when we run this, again, we get the same answer, which is to be expected. So do until loops, they differ from do while loops because do until loops runs until a condition is met, whereas the do while loops run until a condition is false. So in the do while loops, it runs and runs while a condition is true until it changes to false. So in the next loop we're going to look at, it's a for loop and it has two different forms. We have the for next loop and the for each loop. So the for next loop runs the loop n iterations of times and can start at any value. So we use the step value to denote how much the variable is increasing each time. So if we're just increasing it by 1, we can omit the step value. But if we want to increase it by 2, then we need to write the step value. So we're going to do another example, which is going to do the exact same thing. It's going to calculate the sum of 1 plus 2 plus 3 all the way up until 100. So we're going to write a new sub-procedure called sum5. And again, we're going to need to declare I as an integer, and we're going to need to declare sum as an integer, and we're going to need to set I is equal to 1 and sum is equal to 0. So now, instead of doing a do loop, we're going to say for I is equal to 1. So we want to start at 1 and we want to go all the way to 100. And we want to use a step of 1. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, and so forth. And we're going to say that sum is going to be equal to sum plus I. So it's going to start as 0 plus 1, and then it's going to be 1 plus 2, then 3 plus 3, and then 6 plus 4, and so forth. So then what we need to say is we want to go to the next I for each iteration. So we want to start with I is equal to 1, and then go to 2, and then go to 3, all the way up until 100. And then finally, we want at the very end to return the value of sum in a message box. So again, we should expect this value to be 5050, which it is. So now we're going to do a quick example and just change the step. So we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to call it we're going to call the sub procedure sum6. And this time we are going to set the step equal to 2. So what this is going to do is it's going to go I is equal to 1, then I is equal to 3, then I is equal to 5, and so forth, all the way up until 99 in this case, because it'll go up to 100, but since we're doing odd numbers, it's only going to reach 99. So when we run this, we can see that the value we get is 2,500. So if we wanted to, we could quick fact check this in our Excel sheet. So if we do 1, 3, and then copy this all the way down to 99, we can see down here in our bottom right that we get a sum of 2,500. So our sub procedure is working as we would expect it to. So we can also travel backwards. So if we wanted to do this, we could create another sub procedure titled sum7. And instead of going from 1 to 100, we're going to go from 100 to 1 using a step of -2. So we're going backwards. So when we run this, we see we get a value of 2,550. So this time it's taking the even numbers because we're starting at 100, then going to 98, 96, and so forth. So that makes sense. Again, we could fact check it if we wanted to, but I'm not going to in this case. So we also have the for each loop, and this one is useful when a situation calls for executing every single element in an item, or every single element or item in a group. So the syntax is for each item in a group, we want to perform the following actions, and then we want to move on to the next item. So for this example, we have a matrix of random integers, and we want to find the sum of the positive values as well as the sum of the negative values. So if we hop over to the for each sheet, we can see in column A to column D, we have 116 values and we want to calculate the sum of all the positive values and then all of the negative values. So to do this, we're gonna quick open up our Visual Basics editor one last time. And we will create a new sub procedure titled sum8. So here we want to declare both a sum of the positive values and a sum of the negative values. And we're just going to set these to integer as well. So we have dim sum pos as integer and dim sum neg as integer as well. And then we're also going to declare C as variant. So what this means is C is just some random thing or random object, I should say, which in this case, our object is going to be the matrix in columns A to D. So we're going to start by setting sum pos equal to 0 as well as sum neg equal to 0. And then we're going to say for each C in our range, we want to do the following. So if C dot value is less than 0, then it's going to be negative, and we want to add it to the negative value. So what we're going to do is we're going to say sum neg is going to be equal to the negative sum again plus the C value. And if the C value is greater than 0, we can just write else. And what we're going to have here is the sum positive is going to be equal to sum pos plus the C value. And then we have to end our if statement here and tell Excel that we're going to move to the next value in C. So then finally, we're going to have a message box that tells us the sum of the negative integers. As well as the message box for the sum of the positive integers. Note that when I want to combine text with our variables of the positive and negative sums, I use the ampersand to connect them. So the next step would be to run this. So when we run this, we are having a slight problem. So I believe we should have to set C to our range of A1 to D29. Yeah, so now we get a sum of the negative integers to be negative 2,720, and then our positive integers to be 3,049. So we have one last loop to go through today, and that's going to be a nested loop, which is a loop inside of another loop. So I find that these work the best when we need to work with a matrix, as it allows for us to navigate all the way through a column and then jump down to the next row. So to show how this works, I'm going to use the same matrix as the previous example. So we're going to call this last sub-procedure sum 9. So here again, we're going to declare our positive sum as an integer and our negative sum as an integer. In this case, we don't need to declare C as variant. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to declare I as an integer, and this is going to be for the rows, and then we're going to declare J as an integer, which is going to be for the columns. So again, we're going to set our sum positive equal to 0 and our sum negative equal to 0. And then we're going to start with our nested loop. So here what we're going to do is we're going to say for I is equal to 1 to, I believe, 29. Yes. So we're starting in row 1 and then going all the way down to row 29. So we need to denote that in our loop. What we're going to do is we're going to check to see if our cell of 0 plus I, actually, we're going to backtrack here. Sorry, my bad, I missed a line here. So we have our rows. Now we need to denote our columns. So we're going to say for J is equal to 1 to 4. What we're going to do is we're going to say if our cells I comma j, if that value is less than 0, then we want to calculate our negative sum. So we're going to say the sum negative is equal to the previous sum negative plus our cells I comma j value. So remember, I is our rows, j is our columns. And if that is false, then we want to set our sum positive equal to the previous sum positive plus the cell value in I comma j. So I is our row, so that's going to be any value from 1 to 29, and then j is our columns. So then we want to end our if statement, and then we have to go to our next j, which is our next column, as well as our next I. So finally, we're just going to create a message box for both the positive and negative sum values. I'm just going to copy and paste that of the previous sub procedure. So now we can run this and we expect to get the same values as last time. So when we run, again, we get the sum of the negative numbers is negative 2,720, and then the positive numbers is going to be 3,049.
This is all the material I have regarding loops in VBA. I hope you found the contents of this video helpful when using Excel and VBA for decision modeling. If you like this video, please make sure you leave a like, comment, as well as subscribe to our channel. If you're interested in more videos, please check out our playlist where we describe other ways to use VBA. Thanks for watching. Bye.